Approximation methods are extremely important in quantum physics. In the previous video, we looked at perturbation theory, which gives us a method to find approximate solutions to problems that deviate only slightly from exactly solvable system. However, in that video, we made one simplifying assumption. We assume that the eigenvalues are non-degenerate. Again, the term non-degenerate, it means that there exists one and only one eigenvector for an eigenvalue. In this video, we'll take a look at how we can use perturbation theory for the case when eigenvalues are degenerate. First of all, if you haven't watched our previous video on non-degenerate perturbation theory, I would highly recommend you to do so. I think it will make the content of this video a lot clearer. With that said, I will be doing a quick recap of that video over here. For those of you who want to skip the recap and get straight to the point, I'll leave a timestamp in the description. In our last video, the goal was to find an approximation for the energy eigenstates and eigenvalues for a system where the Hamiltonian deviates only slightly from that of an exactly solvable system. One way to approximate it is using a series expansion. So we did a series expansion for both the eigenvalue and the eigenstate, and truncating it to the first order, we found an expression for the first order correction terms. Since the series expansion worked out quite well for us in the non-degenerate case, why not do the same here and see where it leads us? For the energy eigenvalue, just as before, we will approximate it to En0, which is also called the zeroth order correction, plus the first order correction, En1 times lambda, and so on. The physical interpretation of this term is that it is the energy eigenvalue of the exactly solvable Hamiltonian H0. Just to avoid any confusion, let's make sure we understand what the different Hamiltonians are. In this video, we'll be referring to three different H-hats. H0 is the exactly solvable Hamiltonian. This is the good guy. We can find an analytical solution for this Hamiltonian. H1, he is the bad guy. It is due to this H1 that we have to use approximations to solve the problem. H-hat, without any subscript, it is the total Hamiltonian that represents some real-world problem we want to solve. This H-hat is a linear combination of H0 and H1. Moving on, these terms are the correction terms that we will try to find in this video. Again, we will only concern ourselves with finding the first order correction En1, as it gives a good enough approximation for many applications. And we can do something similar for the energy eigenstates as well. But here, we have to be careful. Just as with eigenvalues, N0 is the eigenstate of the exact Hamiltonian. However, now we are dealing with degenerate perturbation theory. So we have to take into account the fact that we have multiple eigenstates. Say we have G number of such eigenstates corresponding to the same energy eigenvalue. So the question arises, exactly which eigenstate should our series expansion be centered around? At this point, we just don't know enough to be able to answer that question. But what we do know is that it is going to be an eigenstate of the exactly solvable Hamiltonian. So, in the most general case, we will center it around some superposition of all the eigenstates of the exactly solvable Hamiltonian. Before moving on, we'll change the notation a little bit here. We will remove the superscript 0. Remember, it denotes the fact that this term is the 0th order correction. The superscript notation is redundant for this term because it is the only term that has any subscript at all. So if you see an eigenstate with a subscript, know that it is the 0th order correction term. Now we are ready to tackle our original problem in its full glory, the time-independent Schrödinger equation with our full Hamiltonian. Remember that this Hamiltonian, by the assumptions for perturbation theory, can be written as H0 plus lambda H1. Now we'll move out all terms to one side so that we have just 0 on the right hand side and insert this series expansion for the eigenvalue. And we'll do the same for the eigenstate as well. Notice that this equation must be valid, that is, it must be equal to 0 for all values of lambda. And the only way we can satisfy this condition is if each term with a different power of lambda is equal to 0 separately. Meaning, all the terms that are linear in lambda must be equal to 0. All the terms that are quadratic in lambda must be equal to 0, and so on. But for that, first we have to multiply out the parentheses on the left side of this equation. Now here, we are only interested in the terms that are linear in lambda. So the other terms which are of higher order, will just denote them with these 3 dots. Now, if we isolate the terms that are linear in lambda, we see that we get the following expression. And as mentioned, this must be equal to 0. Now we'll simplify this equation by dividing through by lambda and obtain the following. So this is the equation that we arrived at. And moving ahead, we will multiply this by the bra ns. This ns is a dual vector of an eigenstate of H0. Now, H0 has multiple eigenstates. Ns is one of those eigenstates. We take the dual vector of that and multiply it with this equation from the left. Now let's try to simplify this. This first term, it drops off because it is just 0. To see that, we can switch the bras and gets like that. And remember, we can do that as long as we take the complex conjugate. And then we see that this part must be 0. Because ns, it is an eigenstate of the unperturbed Hamiltonian H0. It means that it satisfies the following equation. If we move all terms to one side and then factor out ns, then this is exactly what we have in our first term. And therefore, the first term is just 0. Before moving on, we'll just switch the order of these two factors over here, and that shouldn't change anything. And then we'll move this factor inside of our summation. We'll split up this bracket into two terms using the linearity of the operator h1 minus en1, like so. So instead of a bracket with h1 minus en1 as the operator, now we have two terms, one with h1 as operator and the other with en1 as the operator. But remember, really, en1 is not an operator, it's just a constant. So we can pull it out of the bracket. And then using the orthonormality condition, which applies to two normalized eigenstates, we can write this as the Kronecker delta of R and S. If you're unfamiliar with the Kronecker delta, it just takes on the value 1 when R is equal to S and the value 0 when R is not equal to S. Now we'll dwell on this equation for a little while because moving forward it's critical that we understand this equation thoroughly. A useful strategy when you want to get the feel for a certain equation with a sum like this is to actually write out the terms. So the first term when R equals to 1 would be something like this, and the second term, and so on, we would have other terms until the last term, which would have a factor ag, and all of that is equal to 0. Take a moment to pause the video here and see if it makes sense. I want you to notice that this equation is a linear combination of all these a's, a1 through ag. Now, moving forward, we want to solve for these unknown a's. And at first glance, it may seem problematic because we have only one equation over here and we have g unknowns from a1 to ag. But this is actually not the case because this equation, well, it actually holds for all values of s from 1 to g. So, in fact, we don't just have one equation, we have g such equation. One equation for each and every value of s, and s can take on value from 1 all the way to g. So we have g unknowns and g linear equations, and that should get us thinking about matrix equations. This system of equations can be compactly written as: here the vector A is a column vector like so, and the vector M is somewhat of an intimidating matrix, but it's not that hard to understand. So the elements in our matrix come from this term in our sum. So the entry on row number S and column number R in our matrix is given by this term. Let's look at two different scenarios. First, let's see what happens when R equals to S. Then the delta function is just equal to 1. And we get the following expression for all the entries where the row number S is equal to the column number R. In effect, this is the expression for the entries along the main diagonal. Now let's take a look at the other case when R is not equal to S. Then the Kronecker delta becomes 0 and this last term just drops off. In effect, all the other values which do not lie along the diagonal, they only have this first term, get an S into H1 and R. Now that we have arrived at this matrix equation and we understand how it works, let's go about solving it. So the trivial solution to this problem would be if the A vector is just the 0 vector. But that's not the solution that we are after. We want a non-trivial solution to this problem where the vector A contains some non-zero values, or at least one non-zero value. Now, if we want non-trivial solutions, well then we must require that this matrix is not invertible. The linear algebraic way of saying that a matrix is non-invertible is to say that its determinant must be 0, which is exactly the constraint that we'll put on this matrix. Now notice that in this matrix, the only unknown is the energy correction term, En1. And since this matrix is G by G, the determinant will be a polynomial of gth degree in En1. So we have a gth degree polynomial, and that will give us up to g different values for this unknown En1. And thus, by solving this determinant, we can find the first order energy correction term En1 and up to g values for this correction term. Now that we have found the energy correction term, this entire matrix is known, which means that we can now proceed to finding this vector using the methods of linear algebra. We have been talking quite a bit of maths for the last few minutes, but now let's come to the physics of it and understand what this means. Mathematically, we were able to find the unknowns of our systems, En1, and the coefficients A1, A2, and so on up to Ag. But now, let's look at the physics. Remember, we were trying to find an approximate solution for the Schrödinger equation, where the Hamiltonian can be written in the following form. And we said in the beginning that that approximation would be given by the following two equations. Notice how the values of the unknowns which we now have solved for are used in these approximations. The first order energy correction term has been used to obtain an approximation of the first order for the energy eigenvalues, while for the eigenstates, we have only obtained an approximation of the 0th order. Here we have used our coefficients from A1, A2 and up to Ag in our sum to create this linear combination of the eigenstates, and thus we have found the 0th order approximation for a wave function psi. I hope you found this video helpful, and if you did, don't forget to like and subscribe. See you in the next one.